There are maybe a handful of car brands that are instantly recognizable when you hear them or see them on the road, even to the non-car enthusiast. And being English born myself, I've always felt that sense of patriotism towards the brands like Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Lotus, the old Jaguar and the old MG. Well, in my relatively short stint as an auto journalist, I'm proud to be able to bring to you today this 2025 Aston Martin Vantage.
Aside from obvious James Bond references that go hand in hand with the brand, Aston Martin is often associated with sophistication, class and beauty. It's aspirational even for those fortunate enough to be able to consider purchasing one, and in a very understatedly British way tells everyone you've made it. Except there's nothing understated about this car.
Firstly, of course, it's an Aston Martin, so that in itself makes a statement. But we can't ignore the paint colour. This Cosmos orange hue changes and shifts depending on how the sun hits it. And while we doubt that Q Branch or James Bond himself would spec the car this way, it definitely helps you stand out. And then there's the thunderous sound that the 4-litre twin-turbo V8 under the hood makes as well. Back in 2012, I remember going to the Sydney Motorshow when we actually had those, and I saw the Aston Martin One-77, and that definitely left an impression on a younger version of me. So it's hard to think that here we are 12 to 13 years later, and that design is still looking timeless, still working, and very much in the baby Aston. We have now got a baby 177. The grille has been enlarged, some 35 to 40% larger than the outgoing model, to help with the extra cooling required, as well as tripling the amount of radiators the engine needs as well. Extra brake cooling there, functional vents of course, and the larger headlights, now reminiscent of the DB12. A lot of nice little details in there too. We've got the blacked out Aston Martin badges here, which just helps with the overall look and design of this particular car, with the carbon fibre splitters and a few other little bits. At the rear, we still have the carryover of the rear taillight treatment from the previous generation, although now it seems to come in to a little bit more cohesion with the extra widened rear guards. These rear haunches just so accentuated by the shape of the car. Ducktail spoiler there, very aggressive rear diffuser as well, housing the quad 4 tailpipes, which apparently have been enlarged. I admittedly wasn't that much of a fan of the rear taillight styling of the previous model, but here, now in full cohesion with the front and back of this particular car, it really works. The side profile is graceful, purposeful and aggressive, and yet unmistakably very Aston Martin. We have the return of the side strake at the front there, and 21-inch wheels front and back, although we have two 7535 ZR21s versus 325/30s at the rear. Aston Martin worked with Michelin on these particular tyres, so they are Pilot Sport S5s, but you'll notice that they have AML on the end, so they are specifically developed for Aston Martin and this car. This particular model also has been optioned up with the carbon ceramic brake kit, so definitely track focused. Underneath the large bonnet, obviously we have functional bonnet vents there. We have this nice little nostril, but here is the fire-breathing Mercedes AMG sourced 4-litre twin-turbo V8. Now the old car produced a fairly decent 375 kilowatts and 685 newton meters of torque, but with all of the extra air cooling, radiators and tweaking from the Aston Martin team, this new unit now puts out 489 kilowatts and a shattering 800 newton meters of torque. This particular unit has been signed off by Kieran Coffey, and you can see here that it's a front mid-mounted design sitting behind the front axle there and helping the car with its perfect 50-50 weight distribution. The latest ZF 8-speed automatic transmission is sitting under the rear of the car to help with that as well. You can only open the boot lid via the key fob or from a button inside the car. There is no external button to do so, and it's quite a heavy clamshell as well. But in the 2025 Vantage, we have 346 litres of boot space available to us versus the previous car's 280. So it's quite a usable sort of space area here, being able to carry the camera gear for today in here without too much trouble. I'm sure you could get some golf clubs or something in there too. There is a rear parcel shelf up ahead of this divider, and there is of course a strut brace going through there too. Either way, it is a usable space considering the Vantage is a sports car. Now, getting to sit inside an Aston Martin is always going to be a special thing, and it's no different here. But there have been a lot of updates to the interior of this model over the previous car. Gone are the odd buttons that we used for the transmission. Instead, now we have this toggle, which is a little bit more intuitive to get through your gears. There's the engine start-stop button, as well as a ring around it, which allows you to change through the different drive modes. Some rollers here to adjust your temperature, your volume, your fan speed, and buttons otherwise for everything else. So things can be found and got used to quite easily. They've also ditched the old Mercedes sourced infotainment unit, so we now have a custom Aston Martin screen. We have the two screens here, and while I might have preferred the old style binnacle, now there's a word, of the old model which had the 3-dial layout, this layout here isn't too bad either in itself, and can be customized in any case so that you can change your dials around and things. Air conditioning vents, they look nice, feel maybe a little plasticky, if I could say that, but look, they work quite well. In and around here, the console's quite nice, carbon fiber touches everywhere, and we have a bit of a floating center console here, so you can charge your phone underneath this area with the wireless phone charger, and that'll work for Apple users too, because this car does come with wireless Apple CarPlay. I'm told that Apple CarPlay Ultra will be coming to later models as well, so you can take full advantage of that. However, for the rest of us with Android phones, we will have to make do with a USB plugged-in connection, which is more reliable, which will go in underneath the center armrest here, and then Android Auto is available on the screen. Whilst this new system is quite nice, I have found that it can be a bit laggy, and sometimes just accessing different menus hasn't been as intuitive as I would have liked, but I mean, you just get used to these things, right? So this car has been optioned up with the carbon fiber bucket seats, which I think just go towards the race intent of this particular vehicle, with the ceramic brakes as well. Everything is electrically adjustable except for forward and back, and to do that you need to tug on a leather strap between your legs to show that you really love your Aston Martin. Anyway, the steering wheel is quite nice to the touch, as you'd expect. It's quite thick, but has a racy, sporty kind of feel to it, and you do have some nice metal paddle shifters either side. Decent buttons as well for a lot of your options with regards to the screen, cruise control, that sort of stuff. But I will point out that being that this car was built in England, a right-hand drive country, the indicator stalk is on the left. They used to be on the right all the time, but clearly not anymore. So usually this car would come with an 11-speaker, 360-watt audio system. That's just your standard one. But here they've optioned it up with the 1170-watt, 15-speaker Bowers & Wilkins audio system instead. So if you do get sick of the V8 sound and you just want to relax and listen to your tunes, they're going to sound pretty amazing here with 3D headline speakers and subwoofers. It's an amazing experience that you'd expect from this sort of car. But anyway, enough talking about it. I think we need to get this car on the road. So let's start her up and we'll continue the talk there. We are in sport mode, which is effectively normal for this sort of car. And it's very relaxed. Throttle response isn't entirely there, but you can hear the exhaust a little bit. So we do have these buttons on the left here which allow you to change things up a little. So you could be thinking, well, the car sounds a little bit quiet, and you can hit this button and it will open the exhaust valves. So even though you're in the more relaxed mode, you do get a little bit more volume out of the exhaust. You can also adjust the suspension if you'd like to. It's at its most relaxed here, but you can hit the suspension and button and it'll tighten up a bit. Gear changes aren't all that, it's just taking it very relaxed. So for a sports car and in sport mode, we do have the warnings and things for stuff like speed limits. Now the last speed sign it read was a 40 and it's having a go at me even though I know this road is actually a 70 limit. So you do get that subtle beep that you can hear in the background there. There is also quite an aggressive lane keep assist, and also if you're in stop-start traffic, well, this car has a stop-start as well. Just stuff you don't expect to find in a car like this. These seats, they are not the most comfortable, I'm going to say, particularly I would say on a long trip they're going to get to you just due to how hard they are. But again, you have to think of what this car is designed for. But even in sport mode, I mean, I do have the exhaust on slightly louder, but you can just hear that rumble. There is no questioning what you're driving in. So visibility in the Aston Martin is actually pretty good. Not too much in the blind spots there, so we're able to have a look around and you can see quite well what's going on. You have an idea of where the front is, and when it comes to just daily compliance, we also have a 360 camera and all those sorts of conveniences as well, so it's all very helpful with positioning the car, parking it and things like that. The mirrors, they're this frameless design and they're out on these little eye stalks, but they do offer you a good view around. And I just got to laugh that when you lock the car and they fold, they don't actually afford you that much more clearance, which is just, it's quite funny. With these seats being so adjustable, I find that my head is nowhere near the roof. At 182 centimeters tall, that's often a worry about being in such a car. And no, my head is nowhere near the roof. You can find on some of these coarser road surfaces, and I mean this is one of Sydney's major motorways, but the road surface noise is just pretty terrible coming through there, whether that's the tyres or the car itself. But yeah, that's not great. You get a bit of rattling and stuff coming from different parts of the car too. So as much as this is an Aston Martin and you want to love it for what it is and kind of the price that you're going to be paying, there are a few little things about it you got to consider. You sometimes have an issue closing the boot properly. You pull it down and close it, but then you just need to give it that extra push for it to latch, which is a bit strange. And oddly enough, when I went to take my wife out in it for the first time, for some reason the passenger door just didn't want to open. It took quite a lot of wriggling and me nearly falling out of the car again to open it for her, which definitely didn't make a wonderful first impression. And when you're paying $410,000, these are things that you wouldn't necessarily think a car like this would be having. Indeed, when we're reviewing these cars, we're told to put ourselves in the position of someone who could potentially look at buying one of these. And when I think of that, an Aston Martin isn't a car that you think, can I afford that one? Do I have enough money and can I justify the purchase? If you're looking at an Aston Martin, you know whether you can buy it or not. In fact, you've probably already got a couple of expensive cars and the Aston Martin is just one that you want for the weekend or to add to your growing car collection. And I haven't gone through the entire options list. This car has definitely got a lot thrown at it to make it as unique as it is. And so what I'll say there is I think the standard seats in the Vantage are probably going to be enough for most people and more comfortable. Whilst these are nice enough seats, I think for a longer drive you're going to be struggling for comfort there. They definitely are quite rock hard. And whilst you can get into a decent driving position, feel comfortable enough, I just think on a long drive, it's probably just going to get a little bit tiresome. I'm going to put it back in a sport mode for now, since we're just doing some standard motorway driving, nothing too exciting happening at the moment. Just take it easy, and that's one of the beauties of all these cars. And I always sound surprised about it. I guess I shouldn't be anymore, but they can just settle down and they can just deal with the mundane fairly well. If you were so inclined, you could do the daily shopping run in this without too much hassle. That stop start's really weird. It just seems so weird for a car like this to have stop start. I'm sorry. But there is something to be said for driving perhaps one of the prettiest cars on the road in these conditions, because you're certainly turning heads wherever you go. That's just trippy. Imagine the stop start's probably not doing good for the fuel economy, but I mean, come on, you're buying a car like this, do you care about fuel economy? So I'm conscious that the Vantage has grown dimensionally over the previous model, and it's also put on a little bit more weight. So this car tips the scales at 1760 kilograms, about 1643 for the old model, I think. But with the weight distribution and what Aston's done with the car, it sort of hides that pretty well, I'd say. Aston Martin has gone on to be quite proud of the fact that more than 3/4 of the overall mass of the car is between the front and rear axles. And of course, we've talked about before how the front mid-mounted engine and the rear gearbox transaxle helps as well with how this car gets about how it does things. But you do have to be aware of things like all the carbon splitters and side skirts that the car comes with. Am wary of the front nose and the splitter sticking out a bit at the front. Whilst it has been compliant when I've used it, yeah, I don't want to be pushing that too much. But also, as said, it does have a decent parking suite, so it will detect things around you. It is quite sensitive too, I've noticed, in that the alarms will go off for things that aren't as close as you might think. Certainly not in other cars anyway. But look, this is an expensive car, and I suppose you do want to protect it, so I'm all for it anyway. Out on these rural roads kind of feels like where the car wants to be, although again, that road surface noise is coming through. The ride can feel a little harsh at times. Of course, we can dial that back if we want to. So yeah, so when it comes to drive modes, obviously I've talked about the fact that we do have sport, which is basically your comfort mode, and everything's toned down and everything's a little bit more relaxed. Then you have your sport plus, opens up the exhaust valves a bit, sharpens the suspension, gives you that bit more response, and I think that's where most enthusiasts are going to have it, perhaps on a daily basis. Then there is track mode, which just sharpens it all up, and as I mentioned too, also has that extra level of being able to gradually remove through 8 to 9 levels of traction control until it's fully off. Now, of course, we're on public roads here, so I'm not even going to try that. We do need a track to fully appreciate what this car's capable of. We only have the rural roads of outer Sydney, so we're going to make the most of it anyway.
Assuming you can manage the traction through those fat rear tyres, the Vantage is capable of reaching 100 km an hour in under 3.5 seconds. Aston claims a combined fuel economy of 12.1 litres to the 100, or 17.8 in urban conditions, and if you're really well behaved, or just road tripping it out on the open road, you could see 8.7. In our time, we've seen as little as 6.1 and an average of 14.3, which really isn't all that bad for the kind of car it is. But let's face it, no one buying this car is going to care much about those figures, are they? After all, where's the fun in that?
See what I mean though? You can have your expensive radio, but We've already got a glorious soundtrack from that AMG sourced 4-litre twin-turbo V8. And those numbers, so yeah, I've talked about the Aston growing in size, dimensionally it's got larger, it's put on some weight, all the numbers are getting bigger, but the biggest numbers really is the increase in power over the old model. So, 489 kilowatts is definitely nothing to be sneezing at. Certainly the old car with 300 and something was still fairly decent power, but 800 newtons meters of torque would change the Earth's rotation kind of numbers, you know what I mean? The problem that we do have is that the speed limits on these roads aren't that great, and by the time you've already got through the corner you're already at the speed limit, which is a testament to just how well set up the car is, in that it's able to put all that power and torque down in such a controlled manner. So we're having fun and we're listening to that engine, but we could just be doing so much more with it. Those fat tires on the rear are just pretty much like glue. So she handles really well, and did manage to get up and down here without traffic, which was fun, but yeah, it was all over too soon. So the track is where this car, and particularly how this particular car has been optioned up, is where it wants to be, where you can actually give the traction control a decent go and change the level of it, which I found out. So I won't do it here, but you basically will alter your drive mode into track, and then you press the traction control button, and from there you'll have the option to alter the traction control settings and how much it's hand holding you through your driving. By default it comes on at 5, and you can have it all the way up to 9 or all the way down to 0. So lots to play with there, and I guess if you had a track and a lot more options, you'd be able to see the difference, gradually work up and have a play. And so that about wraps it up, I think. This is certainly one of those experiences. I never thought I'd be driving an Aston Martin, and yet here we are bringing it to you. All I can say is a massive thank you to Exhaust Notes Australia for the opportunity, and to Aston Martin for letting us have a go. I guess all that's left is to just enjoy it for the time that I have it, before I wake up from the dream. So again, thanks very much for watching. Do let us know what you think, and do hit us up for our other videos. Until then, stay safe.